So I was talking to one of our homeschool families recently, and she's struggling a lot with like how to manage her day. She's got littles and olders, and she's really trying to navigate how to manage younger kids and older kids and still get all the stuff she has to do done.
Yeah, it can be challenging for sure.
Yeah, so I think a lot of homeschool parents struggle with how to structure their day, what is important.
Plus on top of, like, say, even if your kids don't have a big age range, you've also got to do all of the normal things, like make sure your house isn't a disaster. And unlike school, the kids aren't gone all day, so the house gets messy every day. How do you keep it clean? How do you get dinner on table and still manage to commit time to homeschooling?
Yeah, it's a lot more than people think. It really is. Especially with all the things we manage as moms.
Right.
I mean, even beyond just dinner, doctor's appointments and
unexpected visits, like everything.
Absolutely. So I think that people need like some guidance and just a little bit of reassurance sometimes with understanding that none of us do it all.
Right. So maybe we should both talk about our days a little bit. So what do you do? Like, what does your morning look like most days?
Yeah, so my morning is, to me, an essential part of making sure I get it done. I firmly believe that if I leave the house, we're never going to get it done. So everything has to be attempted before we leave the house for anything. I push for before lunchtime, but that's not always possible. So if we school formal stuff 3 days of the week, that's a success for us. Our mornings look a lot like getting everybody up. We do make beds in the morning. That goes back to that old saying of accomplishing a small task.
Right. Start with a victory.
Exactly. And then we try to get some kind of food in our tummies. Mm-hmm. And then school is at the computer maybe an hour. They do language arts and math. And then once we hit lunch, then it's...
And so, like, are you sitting at the table with them, all with their computers, instructing them? Or what are they doing?
Yeah, not as much. They each have a headset. They each have a computer. So they usually all plug in and sit at the kitchen table. My oldest sits in her room. Mm-hmm. She's got a desk, so she prefers to sit in there. And then if they have questions, they'll just holler at me. I typically try to use that time to clean my kitchen.
Okay.
Because with 3 meals a day at home most days, the kitchen...
Yeah, it needs constant attention.
Constant. You well know that.
Yeah, I do.
So how does your day more look like?
Well, in my mornings, like, and I only focus until about 9:30 or 10 because we try to get a daily routine done every day so that the days that we're in co-op, we still have all of that already knocked out before we leave the door. So the focus of our mornings is just getting ourselves, our minds, our bodies, and our house in order before we're out and running for the day. So I snuggle with both the kids first thing in the morning, and then we do workout, and that's because I found that the kids are way more attentive and with it after they've got their blood moving. Yeah. So even if it's playing on the Wii or going for a walk around the local school, we try to do something. Like, I normally do a workout. Sometimes they come in and join me, but they get to pick as long as they're moving their bodies. And then after our workout, we get ready, take care of our hair, our faces, our skin, our teeth, all of that stuff. And then after that, everybody reads for 15 minutes. I sit with one of the kids and they read out loud to me while the other one reads independently. And then we do a 20-minute house clean, and that wraps up our morning. And at that point in time, like, if we have co-op that day, we're off and running a co-op.
Right.
If we don't,
so your 20-minute house clean, is that just like everybody has a job, or how do you manage that?
The expectation is do some in your room, do some for the family. Okay. And so the kids, if they need to make the bed, they make their bed. If their room's a mess, they need to spend more time on their room. If their room's just a little messy, they do a little bit in there, and then they come help with laundry, take out the garbage, do something like that. Today, I made both of their beds. They cleaned up their bedroom. They spent probably 15 minutes in there, and then they spent 5 minutes cleaning up the living room because the living room had gotten a little bit messy. Most days, though, they're in there making their bedroom and whatever, and I also get to go and make my bed and clean up my bedroom and clean up the bathroom, and then we do 10 minutes of something together, but their room got a little messy. So
Gotcha. Because we'll do rotating to help keep tidying. Like it'll be probably 2, maybe 3 days a week, and it's like one kid does the bathroom, one kid does the living room, one kid helps me in the kitchen.
See, and we've tried that before, but then their room just descended into chaos.
Okay, so we have a once a week, like when we were trying to problem solve with my oldest, we did a deadline. So now everybody has a deadline. So her deadline is Wednesday at 2:00. Yeah. And if she doesn't have a clean room and all of her laundry done when I go inspect it at 2:00 on Wednesday, she doesn't get to do anything after that. Right. Whether that's social, whether that's work, anything, all tasks must be done. So she has a week to kind of let it fluctuate, which I think is pretty natural for most.
Yeah, I think so. And people. I think that actually works really well with her because she is like a burgeoning teenager, so to speak. So she has things to look forward to on the weekend.
Well, we've applied it to the younger too.
I'm like, my kids would just be like, oh, great, I get to hang out in my bedroom for the rest of the weekend.
I can see that. Well, mine do leave every other weekend. So there is some little bit different situation with how often.
Right.
And so they do, like my middle daughter does hers on Sunday, and my youngest does it on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And for him, his big deadline is he doesn't get to go skating if it's not done.
Yeah.
And that's enough. Pressure to force him into getting it accomplished. So I don't know, what do you think is the most important thing when managing a routine or a schedule for anybody?
So here is something that I do want to talk about, because this is a big debate in homeschooling, and some people are like, oh no, not a schedule, a routine, because the first time you're off your schedule you'll feel awful and you'll just want to drop it, so create a routine. And I mean, there is truth to that. Right. Having said that, I think a routine creates the ability in your mind to accomplish 1,000,001 things in an hour. And reality is, an hour doesn't cut it for 1,000,001 things. Like, my kids get 20 minutes for personal grooming. And I know that's a lot. That's a lot of time.
So I cut that out. Okay.
But then they take care of their faces, put on sunscreen, make sure their face is clean, brush and floss teeth, brush their hair, make sure they look presentable to go out in public, put on chapstick. Like, it's not like I'm just like, hey, go throw on clothes and let's go. Like, I actually expect them to follow a routine, you know?
My son just throws on clothes and goes. Getting him to try to do 20 minutes of body care is not going to ever happen.
Well, it's a fight with Catherine, but she's like, I don't need deodorant. And I'm like, honey, you kind of do today. So I want you to just get into the habit of putting it on every day.
Well, that is,
you know,
I think that's a struggle a lot of kids.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why they have 20 minutes, is so that if somebody is like wandered off and they're not brushing their teeth, I still have time to go track them down and get my teeth brushed in that 20 minutes.
Like, I have done that. I've left the house because I was taking care of everybody else.
Yeah.
And I get in the car and I'm at like halfway to where I'm going. And I'm like, oh man, I hope I have a mint in my bag.
Yeah, no kidding.
The chaos of that. So what's the other one? You said there were like two little mindsets, and one was the schedule.
Well, one is the routine. Just create a routine, which means you do the same things in the same order, but there's no time limit on them. And I need a schedule, and my family, I feel, needs a schedule. Like, you get this amount of time to get this done, because otherwise, like, one of my daughters and I, we're like ready in 17 minutes. Like, we're done. And my other daughter is going to take 2.5 hours. Like, and I really feel like people are like, oh, well, if I create a routine, then in the morning we'll get up and we'll snuggle, and then we'll have breakfast, and then we'll do morning time, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that, and then we'll do that. And they never put time next to it.
I see.
So by the time they're done, it's 7 p.m. Like, the day's over and they just started school.
Gotcha.
Whereas if you've got a schedule, then you have to be very realistic about, like, you guys say you spend an hour about on school. We spend about 2 hours on school, but I know that. It's not like a guess, like, oh, we just do math after reading. Like, we spend 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I think the timer is something that is underutilized by a lot of families.
Yes.
Even on your phone just saying, we're going to work on this for 15 minutes and setting a timer.
Yeah.
I think that can be extremely helpful when working on how to schedule your day.
Agreed.
Because people do lose track of time. Like, I think that happens way more than even they probably realize.
Agreed.
That if they put a timer on things, it might be easier to manage.
Yes, agreed. I think time management's a big thing. And I understand the point about like, oh, well, that was used for factory workers. And if your kids are really into something or whatever, well, if you give your kids enough free time, then they'll have time to explore deeply into that. But you also have to be realistic that some things need to be accomplished by a certain time, and you're going to have to schedule your time to make that happen. Like if we're going to be at co-op on time, and since I run the co-op, I have to be.
You can show up, sure.
Then we have to get all this stuff done before we walk out the door. And you need a schedule to get that done because the routine's not going to cut it.
Gotcha. I see where you're talking about the differences now. I think that can be really useful for people. Is very much, I think timers is probably one of the number one most useful tools for homeschoolers because we don't have a lot of
we don't have a
lot of external input. We know we have from when we wake up until whether we leave for co-op or we leave for skating or we leave for
soccer or whatever your kids are into.
You have that time amount, and sometimes that 4 hours, you're like, oh, we're going to do so much. But then you spend 3 hours of it doing something completely unrelated to
working out and getting dressed and all those things. They take time.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
What do you do with the rest of your day after lunch? You've got all this time. You've spent an hour schooling.
If we don't have a lot of stuff going on, we do like just free time. So we don't have electronics unless they're requesting to look up some information or do like a documentary if they all want to sit down and watch a documentary, which means that they have time to play outside. They have time to play with their Legos. They have time to explore interests if they have something that they're really into. My middle kid was like all about the Titanic and there for like 2 weeks. That's all that she looked at was the Titanic. And she watched documentaries and she can tell you stuff that I didn't even know.
Right.
So I like that ability to let them explore.
Right.
But it also
because that's when that but it's very much like a factory. This is when it's not like a factory because then she has all this free time to really do whatever she wants to and not be constrained by the bells.
Absolutely. I think it's a kind of a marriage of the two ideals that works really good for us. I mean, your kids have free time like that as well, don't they?
Yeah, because from 9 to 2 every day, the only thing we have is a snack and lunch. And that's because on 2 days a week and then a third day of week, a little bit less. But on 2 days a week, we actually have co-op commitments that time. So my kids are either in class or teaching class. I'm running program between 9 and 2.
Yeah.
And then on another day, a little part of that is for co-op. But the rest of it, like on days when we don't have co-op, that's their free time. That leaves a big old chunk for them to do
the same things.
Whatever they need to do. And during that chunk, I can take care of all of my not in-person co-op responsibilities, take care of my house. The kids are expected to pitch in, and they do pitch in around the house. But they also have a lot of time to explore their own interests, play with their friends, climb in the trees, whatever.
Yeah. Not to mention all the myriad of books that are scattered throughout that they can grab. And
exactly.
Go wander off with.
I mean, we were talking earlier over by my dining room table. I've got all these snowflakes, right? Well, Erin did a math project, and it was about hexagonal representation and whatever, and we did a snowflake. Well, when the timer went off and we were done, we kept going for another hour, and we were like, well, can we make octagonal snowflakes? How about, and so we were folding them in very bizarre ways.
So
a little carried away.
Yeah, but that's where the freedom of homeschooling comes in. Is on that day there was nothing after the timer, so you got to continue to explore something that you guys all enjoyed.
Right, exactly.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. So if you had any advice for like a beginner homeschooler that's really struggling and trying to sit there and grind away for 6 hours a day like a school, like what's the best thing to advise them?
I mean, if that's what you want to do, knock yourself out. But I don't think it's particularly sustainable, and I don't think it's helping your kid because we unschooled for a number of years, as you know,
Yes.
and my kids got a lot and they retained a lot, because the fact of the matter is, whenever you pick something up because you're doing it out of curiosity or joy or playfulness, you are much more likely to retain it than if you are doing it out of rote repetition, which a lot of curriculum is just built to like pound it into you over time.
Yeah. I mean that wouldn't have been my favorite thing. Like once I know it, I'm good. Let's go. Like find something else.
So what about you? What do you think?
I mean, I really think that, you know, be a little bit more realistic with your kids. Like, if they're doing this well, why are you doing it 30 more times?
Yeah.
Like you said, the repetition. When I started, I was going to be hardcore and I was going to be just as good as the school. And I went and bought expensive box curriculum and we sat down and it got so tedious because my oldest would know what we were talking about. And I was like, no, you have 30 more problems to do. She's like, really? Like, do I have to? And I'm like, well, maybe if you know it, maybe not. And once I kind of let go of that expectation, man, things got so much more
easy and enjoyable.
Yeah. Really. I mean, yeah, some days are still difficult. It's not always easy when you're cutting it down, but it made the experience more enjoyable for everyone involved.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, nobody was frustrated or exhausted from doing tedious work.
Right.
Why are pulling our kids out of the school system? Because they're bored doing tedious, busy work.
Yeah.
To some extent. So I think that's really important for new people to understand. I think experienced homeschoolers need to hear it sometimes too.
Agreed.
Because they get wrapped up in their own expectations of what it should look like and forget that expectation is just theirs.
Right.
Like they can make it whatever they want it to be.
Right. Well, and you and I talk a lot about usefulness of knowledge. Like,
absolutely.
Yes, it is useful to have a broad array of knowledge, but then you can pick and choose what you want to know better and better understand, because some knowledge is just not particularly useful.
Well, we just had this conversation this morning with my oldest. She was doing algebra through Khan Academy, and she was like, when am I ever going to use X for Y in a math problem?
Oh, I've actually got answers for that one.
And I'm like, well, for me, I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I'm not particularly use that very often. So, you're smart. You probably figure it out. And she's like, can I do something else? So she's taking personal financial literacy and stuff.
Oh, smart. Really useful.
So, yeah, we pulled her off of the algebra that she's like, I don't like it. I don't want to do it. She's never going to choose a job where she has to do algebra because she doesn't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And gave her a math that was a little more easy for her to utilize in day-to-day life.
Right. Actually useful for her, like practical is what it is. It's practical application.
Especially since she's got a job and she does make money.
Yeah.
So being able to, budget her personal really was relevant for her.
Right. So do your kids do anything else? Like they do an hour at the computer in the morning and that's it?
Oh, no, of course not. We have a history timeline project we're working on that they'll work on all through their years of homeschooling. Mm-hmm. Like it'll serve them from, now at 11 is my youngest till graduation.
Right. So they're just going to keep
a perpetual project.
Okay.
Where they work on the history. We just started states for geography of the United States, and they plan a trip to the state, and so they get to select fun things to do, cool things to go see. So they're liking it, and if I ever wanted travel plans, I got them.
Yep.
So it doubles.
And they're learning geography, and it's an interesting way for them to do it.
So we do some other stuff outside of their plain book work, but it's really fun stuff in their minds. They don't really think of it as school.
Right.
Like they tell people all the time, I don't do very much school, and I'm like, well, you really do, but I'm like, I consider that success because that means you're learning it so organically that it doesn't feel like somebody's shoving it down your throat.
Agreed. But your kids are also involved in other things too, like they skate, they do
archery, skating. We have co-op, we have dance. Very active outside of what we do education at home.
Right.
They're and my oldest is very self-educating in certain topics. Like she has chosen about insects. Like, holy cow, she can tell you things that I didn't even know about wolf spiders.
Right.
Like, she raised one. So it's wild. But they do stuff outside of, like, with friends and stuff like that as well. Like,
so it sounds like some of their education they're getting through themselves, like they're self-educating using resources and whatever about topics that they're interested in.
Absolutely. And it's just interest. Like, Cassie did the plants. She raised succulents, and she raised all different kinds, and she learned all about the soil content and what they needed, and she nurtured them, and she took them apart and made more plants. I mean, and I never did anything but buy a few supplies when she asked, you know, and was like, woo, and now she knows so much about all these succulents. She can name them. She can tell you what, you know, they are, all their biology behind it. Like, it's all there, and it's really beautiful.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
So, I mean, of course they get stuff from other places besides just the sit in front of the computer.
Right. But I want them to know that.